Hello and welcome to LifeTec's webinar series. This one I'm presenting today is on switches. My name's Chris and welcome. So how does a switch work? Essentially, a switch is a means by which to close a circuit. So as you press down on the surface, it pushes a metal contact to close the electrical circuit and thereby activating the device. So for example here, so at this point with the switch open, there is no current flowing through, and once I apply pressure onto the surface of the switch, that allows the circuit to close and electric current will flow, activating the device. Essentially, most of your mechanical switches are simply that. As you can see there, just a means by which there's a physical closing of the circuitry. The mechanical switches are your most common ones on the market, and you're probably familiar with quite a few already. Okay, so I'm just going to go through a range of the different mechanical switches and demonstrate a few as we go. The jelly beamer switches, these are radio linked switches. There's a few variations on the theme, but basically it allows you to use the switch remotely. So instead of having your cord and your jack, these are not corded, which means that the switch can sit on the child's wheelchair tray, and the device that they're activating can be plugged in over on another tabletop. So you're most probably familiar with the jelly beans. They're the ones that are pretty much stock for education and the like. For kids with poor fine motor control, they're quite easy to access, and they've got a lot of utility for a whole lot of activities. They can also be mounted because they're on the flange here. There are holes for a screw point, and they can be actually mounted to a mounting system. So your jelly beamer, I'll show you this. So what I was talking about before, here's your switch surface, and this housing here has your radio link to enable you to transmit then to this unit here, which will then activate the device. So so we'll plug her in. Okay, turn it on. Okay, turn this one on. So I can have this switch over here. And we have that power. And the idea would be that when I press the switch, the fan will then operate. Okay. Same sort of idea, just with the larger switch surface. That's the big beamer. The SLAT is called the big beamer SLAT. The SLAT stands for switch, latch, and timer. So it actually has a bit more functionality than your straightforward switch, which is, you hit the switch and the device will operate. The latch means that you can actually set it up so that when the person hits the switch, it will continue to. One hit will be to turn the device on, and another hit will be required to turn the device off. So it's the settings that you can do within the transmitter unit. And the timer is a means by which you can hit the switch and the activity will continue for a set period of time, in seconds or minutes, and then it will stop, and then you're then required to come back onto the switch to have the activity replay. So it's just other ways of teaching switch skills and encouraging a person to come back onto the switch. So again, this one here, the Jelly Beamer, set up for the switch latch and timing. Your big buddy buttons, these are a large surface area, good for kids with to hit not quite nice and easily. Again, just a simple mechanical switch. You can actually touch it pretty much anywhere on there. It requires a reasonable amount of force to activate, but it's a good one for the kids. Again, same scene, same sort of idea. Your bass switch, these are your coming onto your lever type switches. So it's it's pivot operates from one end, so you've got a fair bit of travel at the other. We've still got a micro light switch underneath it, but just a different type of activation. Same sort of idea. As you can see, there's a pin at the top, which is your pivot point, and touching the other end will activate it. So this sort of thing won't be able to activate all over the surface. Your trigger switches, the trigger switches are kind of useful little design. As you can see, this one here. Touching the whole surface will not activate the switch because the switch itself actually recesses as you touch it. But touching it like this won't activate. So if you've got somebody who hits a switch, something like this will actually encourage finger isolation, or may be something that it's small enough that they can have in hand and use your thumb to activate. But the sort of features that may be quite useful for some individuals. Sorry. Big red switch, again mechanical, and your spec switch. The spec switch are much like the jelly bean, very much a part of the everyday switch use. These can often be used as switches for like a head array for wheelchair control. And they've got a flange with screw holes where it can be mounted, as you can see. It requires a little bit of force to activate. Can be activated on any part of the surface. So it can also be used as a mode button for for wheelchair control and the like. Quite fairly small, fairly discreet. You can get a black one that will not be obtrusive on the wheelchair. The foot switch. These are, as you can appreciate, a lot more robust than your standard switches. This one has a metal casing. It has a non-slip surface put onto here and underneath, and actually requires considerable force to activate. Personally haven't had a lot of application for individuals with this one. If you could appreciate a person who might have cerebral palsy, you could put this underneath their foot to activate and probably generate a lot of extension tone. So But you know, knowing that it's there, you might have a client that will have the application for it. Your micro lights. We do use these ones a lot. They're quite a tidy little unit. They're a lever switch, so again, they pivot from this point, and your activation is at this end. It requires, as you can see, very, very little force to activate. It has a reasonable amount of travel, but you can actually have it so that it's on a person's, in contact with a person, and they can use barely millimeters of movement, of travel, to provide the activation. It's got good auditory feedback, a good click. And so for somebody who's not able to generate a lot of force with that switch activation, this is a nice little unit. Finger isolation button, much like as I was saying before with the let's see if we'll find it again. With this little switch, where you require finger isolation. For kids who may have a tendency to slam and hit the switch for that, for that feedback, the finger isolation button encourages them to use one finger to press the button, and it takes away the reward of the noise that the switch can make. So that might be useful for some little individuals. Finger switch here, a little bit tricky, awkward positioning. Sometimes you can put it over the back of the finger and try and use it so that the flexion of the finger can activate the switch. Again, a little micro switch in the housing. Interesting one. It's got a high tensile wire that goes up to that to the end, and you can actually strap the top of the finger to that wire as well. It's yeah, not a lot of application to date, but just again knowing what sort of things are out there and what sort of features may be useful. The ultimate switch, I do use this one a fair bit. I've got it here to show you. All right, so I'll just zoom out on this one. So this is the switch. You've got the housing of the mechanism inside here. So it's got a nice long gooseneck mounting with a clamp system at the end. From here, you've got your cabling with your pin. So what's nice about this switch, and the reason I quite have a liking for it, is that it's got like a spring along here, which enables you to deflect the switch without damaging it, and it actually requires quite a little bit of force. So it can deflect it all over. So the person, has a tonal pattern and pushes into it, it's not going to hurt them. If you've got it positioned, along on the cheek, turning into that, it's going to just deflect away. It's not going to hurt. But then it actually requires very small controlled movement to activate it. Actually, that sounds a bit sick there. So that's the ultimate switch. It's from Technical Solutions. Okay. This is a mounting switch, rigid arm on it with a soft pad. The idea that could be mounted either side of the headrest to provide one or two switches to control and equipment. The one switch here, similar sort of idea to the ultimate switch, whereby you've got a springed arm that deflects to activate, to connect to close the circuit. This is a head switch on a mounting. It provides a positioning for using a head for activation. Yeah, it can be used elsewhere as well, of course. And it's the force inwards that into that housing that activates the switch. It doesn't require a lot of force, so it's quite nice there. This is a ping pong switch. This is quite clever, and it is just that that activation surface at the end is as a ping pong, and it's in that plastic housing. Again, that switch moving inwards provides the activation. It's there on a gooseneck mount with a clamp. Quite a nice one in that it's good auditory feedback, and with that gooseneck mounting system can be positioned quite easily for anywhere that a person's able to have in the control site. The string switches, they're a little bit different. String switch is simply that, and pulling on that string provides the activation for the micro switch. It actually requires very little force, but you can actually add electric bands if a person overmoves, has involuntary movement. You can make it so that that can absorb some of the movement. This is another version of the same idea. They're quite useful. They could be hooked around the thumb, and just a small thumb movement providing the activation. This looks ostensibly just like your usual switch, like your jelly beans and the like, but it's actually a USB. So at the other end of that cable, instead of having a 3.5mm jack, it actually has a USB plug, and that plugs into your computer and provides the equivalent of a mouse click. So it's still a switch, but the functionality is very specific in that it actually is the left mouse click replication. Thumb switch, for those who've got enough range there to activate. The pillow switch, these have been around for a long time. I've got one here that I can show you. It's got a very dense foam surface on here, and good click, as you can hear. Quite a reasonable amount of force. It's got a hard plastic housing at the back. I have run into problems with these because the cushioning behind this to allow for the travel is actually just little foam blocks, and they have disintegrated over time. Although I've heard that some people will put a plastic, a fabric cover on them, and it sort of keeps it all together quite nicely. Vertical wall switch, again, it doesn't matter which way you deflect this, the switch will still activate, but it's still a single switch. A chin switch, now this is one that Technical Solutions have developed. Loops around the neck, and this is the activation here. So neck flexion onto this provides your click. It actually requires a fair bit of force. So it's because that movement coming down. A little bit different. The cap switch. These are actually quite small, as you can see. You can choose to use the top of the switch. You can position it like this on the switch surface downwards and use the top of the switch, the base of the switch as the activation surface, or turn it over and have your this switch travel at the top. You can see there's only a small bit of travel at the very top of the surface there. Small and discreet. Again, it can be used for managing, for changing modes on wheelchairs and the like. Mini cap switch, same sort of idea. Finger button. This is a fairly recent one, and it's kind of cool because you have the hand itself is the mounting. So with it in hand, and it's just the movement of thumb away from onto and from the index finger, which is kind of nice. It's a good idea. You flex switch this. Yeah, it's a hard rubber end on it. It can be deflected in any direction. It's probably, you might use it under a chin, or it might be something you can have positioned over the back of the hand and moving the hand across. It's unusual. Not a lot of application with it. There's other things that probably do the same job better. Fingertip switch. Again, you've got a bit of in-hand mounting there, but you're required to be able to sustain a finger extension and control the movement onto the button. Different. Your click switch. This is these ones have been around for a long time. Very basic. It's a lever switch, so the activation's on one end only. Yeah, not much to say about them. They're not. I don't find them particularly aesthetic. So your cuddly switches and your soft switches. Basically, it's a fabric cover with a foam inside, sandwiched with a micro switch in between the two, and that provides a soft surface. This can be quite a nice one for somebody who might be in bed, and you can position the pillow this on a pillow, and they can turn their head to activate the switch. So that might be quite a nice one. Or where there's risk of a person injuring themselves, it's quite a nice one. So membrane switches. Membrane switches work a little bit differently in that it's much like your iPad and the like. It's the conductivity of your skin that actually provides the activation or the closing of the circuit. Now the trick with this is that because it's not a mechanical switch, you don't have the travel, and so you don't get that kinesthetic feedback of the movement of the switch. If you can think about when you use you touch a switch, you've got that travel, you've got the feedback of the vibration from the clicking mechanism, and you've got the auditory feedback. When it comes to looking at the membrane switches, you don't have any of that. There's no travel, there's no clicking, there's none of that vibration. So and it's something you'd use for a person who'd be very aware of those features not being there, and then you still have enough sensation perhaps at the end of their fingertips to know that they've made contact with the surface, with the activation surface. A flexible switch here basically we can wrap around something. So you can wrap it around a toy or the like, and that becomes the activation surface. So that's a little bit clever. And this one here is a fingertip switch, much similar sort of mounting as we had before, but again, instead of a mechanical activation it's a touch of that membrane surface. For kids, a mat switch might be cool. It might be not necessarily walking on them, but it could be that they may roll onto it to provide the activation. So it's looking at encouraging movement potentially. It might be a good application for it. Your pinch switches, the deflection of the plastic arm on it brings the two metal surfaces into contact with each other, and that provides the switching. A little bit different because it's in hand, but it might be something that might be easier for the person to do, not necessarily in a pinch position like that, more in hand and using a thumb inside the hand might be easier. This is a larger version of the same similar sort of principle. Deflection of or bending of that plastic arm is your switch activation. So multiple switches. So sometimes it might be a case that you want to give a person a choice of one or two devices to operate, or it might be that the person is using a software program that enables them to scan with one or two switches. This is where you might consider multiple switches. So ones like this can have up to 6 different different switch outputs. I'll give you an example of it. I've got here, once I find it, here we go. This is a type of multiple switch. So this has, as with the Moosies, has a 9-pin connector, as you can see here, and then from that you have, in this case, 4 outputs. That means the switch, well, it looks like a joystick, but in actual fact is actually a series of switches. So click. So potentially you could use it like a joystick, except you don't have the proportional control. It's just absolute. So that'll be a click for one direction of wheelchair control. Instead of having a head array, that would be another direction, like that. This is a joystick one. Again, this is actually 4 switches. It's not a joystick as you know a joystick. This is the one I just demonstrated before. There's 4. You can potentially have 4 switches and a deflection in each quadrant, but there's a 5th one for pushing straight down on the top of the joystick. Okay, so entry switches. There's a whole series of switches that are out there for kids, and the idea is to encourage them to engage with the switch in the first instance. So it's more of it's a bit of a training device, whereby the switch itself can actually be the activity. So a child touches the switch surface, and there's lights might go off, or music might play. And that provides that cause and effect. You can then, with some of the switches, start turning off some of those features, and so that the switch becomes a switch, and the activity that the switch is plugged into becomes the focus of attention. I'm just going to show you a range of the different types of switches that are out there for the younger kids, looking at getting engagement. Some of them are sensory style ones where it's a tactile involvement on the switch that encourages the child to interact with it. as you can see here with sensory plate. I've got one of these Senso dot tactile switch here. So they're actually quite large, as you can see. It's got a sort of a rubberized texture on the outside. It's all dimply, and the idea is to, that's interesting and engaging for a child to touch. Again, just fun and interactive. Smooth source switch. That's got quite a sort of a rubbery texture to it as well. We'll have more of a focus on the sensory side of it. Just give you an idea what's out there. So the idea with this one is that the vibrations provides that, the motivation. That's the Bumpy source switch. I've got one to show you. Again, large surface area, activates quite easily, nice and light control, and anywhere on the surface. Here's an interesting concept where basically it's a series of switches, and they're activated by walking on them. You can that's then plugged into a MIDI switch box, and then onto a keyboard. So the playback is through the keyboard, not the switch itself. Multi-sensory switch that has lights, noise, and vibration, and they can be switched on or off. Okay. It's actually not so much a switch, but well, it can be used as a switch whereby you've got two switch jacks coming out the back, and you can plug them into toys or for choice making. But it's ostensibly a very early talking aid, voice output device. And this is again also voice output, but has the activation. So you can help develop that association between the choice making and the event happening. Okay, leaf switch. That's actually roller switch. That wasn't supposed to be in there. Roller switch. Again, just fun stuff. Okay, so we've got a big red switch here. This is the early version of the radio, the wireless ones. It's radio linked. These are adapters to. Okay, here we've got switch adapters. Now, switch adapters basically modify the function of the switch. Now, where before I was saying before, the SLAT, the SLAT. These boxes provide the same sort of function to a generic switch. So it enables you to change how the switch actually works. So latching and timers. The intention module is a clever unit developed so that you can dial down the responsiveness of the switch. So if a person actually has involuntary movement and they hit the switch several times before they actually intend to do it, you can get it to ignore the smaller hits, and it's only the sustained hit that will be registered as an intentional activation. The switch director allows you to plug one switch in, but then have several functions you can control several devices. The idea being that one short hit on the switch will operate one device, but then you can then sustain a hold and change over to a second device. This is very useful. If you've got a person who's quite limited in how many switches they can access, so they might be very limited in their control sites. They may be able to, the range of movement may only allow them to use an eyebrow switch for example. And from there, you've got to make it the best of that one single point of control. So this enables that one switch to become several to be able to control several devices. Again, the steady hand, this is another modifier, and this one allows you, it blocks the uncontrolled movements on switch release, not the switch activation. And this is where you can't delay the release because you might be using it for scanning. This can help modify how the switch is used. This is the radio link system for switches, so it functionally allows you to have the switch separate from the control. That might be useful for an adult, perhaps, who needs a switch on their wheelchair, but they will drive around with their wheelchair, or what they want to control is in one place in a particular room. Okay, pneumatic switches. A balloon switch. A balloon switch is a very, very clever piece of kit. And I'm just going to see if I've got it here. Okay. It's pneumatic. So pneumatic switches, by definition, are controlled with air pressure. And what we have here is a balloon switch. This is your output line into your device, whatever it is that you want to control. And this is the control unit. The activation is with a simple balloon. Inside this balloon is foam, so just to hold a bit of shape. It's held onto this plastic tubing with elastic band. There has to be quite a good seal there, because what you're after, once I turn it on, this is battery operated, is the squeezing of the balloon bulb provides activation, and it actually requires very little force, as you can see there. And you can regulate the amount of force required by changing the dial here, and you can increase or decrease the sensitivity of that activation. Right down here, and what is kind of clever in that, for those who are not able to generate to release a switch, like it enables you to continue to squeeze. So it might be that you can only generate a little bit of force, but you don't have to release because it resets, and then you can apply more pressure. So it's kind of clever and quite nice, interesting concept. Sit puffs are a mainstay for those with quite significant physical impairment. Not so much for people with high tone or anything like that, because they've got poor lip closure, but it might be a person with motor neuron disease or MS or high-level spinal injury. And person-mounted switch control is kind of is a means by which you don't have to, it's with you, so it doesn't matter if your head moves. You've still got the access to the switches. They generally tend to be sit and puff, which means that you actually have control over two switch functions. So it's a gooseneck setup. As you can see, you've got the clamp to the wheelchair, or it could be the bed or whatever. Gooseneck gooseneck arm coming across holding the tube, which is the rear control box that has the mechanism in it. So this is an example of another head-mounted SIP puff. I've got one here to show you. So here's the section that goes over the back of the head. As you can see, you've got, I might just see if I can get the focus in a bit better. So, okay, so that goes over the ears, like so, around the back of the head, like a pair of sunglasses, back to front, and then you've got this arm that comes down here, and you can position there's a bit of wire in the plastic tube here, so you can bend it to position it near the mouth so that you can just grab it with your lips when you need it. So this then travels off, this tube then travels off to the control box. The control box in this case has two switch outputs, and so that'd be your SIP and your puff. This is sort of, it would be handy for if you're, for example, using maybe a head tracker and you're wanting switch input for your mouse clicks. That would enable you to have both a mouse click for left mouse click, and the second one might be puff for right mouse click while you're using a head tracker. So that's that's a very specific application, but there's a different, essentially you can use it for environmental control, a whole lot of other devices as well. But it's nice that it's person mounted. Another SIP puff thing, basically they're all the same principle. And again, another little unit. The integra switch is also a SIP puff mechanism. It's got a quite small little mouthpiece. It's rigid, whereas a lot of the other SIP puffs tend to be a bit more flexible. So, and it's got quite a sophisticated mounting system. Okay, so variations on the theme. This is a pneumatic supplied in a different way. It's instead of using your breath for the SIP and puff, you're actually using a grip switch. So same base unit. You've got your tube here, but at this end we've got a tube, and that's a squeeze, as you can hear, provides the clicking mechanism, the mechanism for the switching, and it's quite a bit of auditory feedback there. A little bit of force required, but not a hell of a lot. It's not too difficult. Of course, you wouldn't consider something like that really for for an individual with high tone, because you just feed into it a bit. Okay, same sort of principle here. This one here, you can adjust how much force is required, and it's inflated, so you can just use the pad and just apply pressure to that, or there's a squeeze ball that can interface with that same unit, and there's a little squeeze pad as well. So it's got a few different components that can be used with the client. They're all based on pneumatics. Okay, Bluetooth switches. So we looked at radio link switches before. That allows you remote control for other devices, distance from you. Bluetooth switches are designed to support applications. So where you've got a device that requires Bluetooth connectivity, and it's been developed so that it allows for switch access, switch input, then you can use a Bluetooth switch. So the idea being, this is the new Bluetooth. It's quite a nice, tidy little unit. You've got two activation surfaces here, so basically two switches. So if you've got an app that requires that allows for two switches for choice making, it could be step, 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 select, or just using one switch for cause and effect, or scanning, or simple one switch scanning. So it's built into the base, so it's as it is. But this does allow you, if a person has to use specific switches and you're just using this as an interface, you can actually plug the person's own switch into there, and it will still function in the same way as a control for the iPad or the app. These are variations on the same theme. So these again, but instead of having a base unit, the Bluetooth is built into the switch itself, and you've got a receiver unit. Obviously, you can't plug a USB like that into an iPad, so it'd be somewhere. There'd be something that you'd use with a laptop or a desktop computer, Windows-based. So here, it's proprietary. So the box here works only with its own switches, and they're remote. But then, so that will talk to directly from the switch to the control box. This is the older version of the one I just showed you before, and as you can see, it does allow you to plug switches in if its own switch system is not going to do the job for the person. Okay, another remote switch option, but again, this one works with as a proximity sensor, so you don't actually have to touch the switch. But that it will then transmit to the receiver unit. It does have you've got the receiver can be either just a standard receiver, or it can be the whole SLAT. The sensor switches. Okay, so this is where they're a lot more. There's a bit more involved here. These have a range of different inputs. This one, for example, it's called scatter, which stands for self-calibrating auditory tone infrared. So it allows you to use a variety of gestures. It can be set up for an eye blink, or an eyebrow movement, or head movement, and facial movement. So you don't have to physically touch it. It's the range of the infrared beam. If the beam has been shortened, then it's detected as movement, and that will be the activation. Table tapper. This is a sensor that detects the vibrations. So it makes you can put attached to a table, so the whole table becomes a switch surface, whereby a tapping on the table activates your device. Proximity switches. This is whereby they're designed to activate within a specific range. And it provides a beep and lights to provide feedback for its activation, because obviously you don't touch it, so you don't have that the sound of touching or the feedback you normally get. The John Donson ones, these are sensitive to small muscle movement, so it allows an individual who there's any sort of twitch movement or can isolate activation of muscles instead of full movements. That can be placed over the muscle belly, and the activation provides the tensing of the muscle provides the switch activation. The dials on there allow for it to be for the sensitivity to be fine-tuned. These are new technologies that are coming through, and it's looking at using brainwaves to control specialised software, which then translates that the brainwaves into switching. This is the sort of stuff I think it's going to progress and develop a lot further along the way for those, especially for those individuals who may have sort of locked-in syndrome, where there's very none of, if any, voluntary control of movement. Sound switch. I've got one here. This is. It's responsive to sound, as you can see, but you can then change the sensitivity down so it doesn't activate to just voice control, to just voice. It's all very good for as an option, but just be cautious of the fact that there might be other ambient noises in the environment for, where the person might be using it. Neuro switch. This is very specific because it only operates with its own switch with its own specialised software. But it's an electromyograph monitor, but also it's a myograph, so it's the electrical signals of the muscle that actually controls the switch, and it's got specialised scanning software. Tilt switch is simply a bit of mercury in a housing, and the movement of mercury in response to the head movement or changes of angle will activate the switch. So the twitch switch, again, activated by small muscle movement, and again the switch sensitivity can be adjusted. Magic Wand sensor. This is I'm going to show you this one because it's quite another clever little piece of kit. This is the base unit, and with the switch output, it can be used in several different applications. So you can plug in a wand. This little section plugs into here, and that enables the end of the wand to be the point of activation. Alternatively, you can plug in this little cable. The end of the cable is a little conductor surface, and that can be placed velcroed to a surface and that can become the point of activation. The other one that's really nice with the same unit is this headset. Now the headset's designed to go behind your head, over your ears, and then this arm here can be positioned under the jaw or at the lips. And the idea here, let's plug it in. Okay. As an extension, this becomes the activation. Once I get it. Okay. Okay, so we've got it going. So essentially, that little section at the end there becomes the activation point, and that could be your chin touching it. So opening your jaw, so the skin of your chin touches, and that's your activation. Okay. So another clever solution for individuals who might have a lot of control over the rest of the body, but if they've got control over jaw movement, that's a very feasible option for switches. Okay, so other switches that are out and about, we don't have them yet in Australia. They're not marketed here, but just to let you know what there is out there. This is a tongue switch, so you basically bite, or you have that stabilised between your teeth, and you push forward with your tongue onto that little red spot, and that's your switch activation. This one's a bite one, so again, it's positioned between your teeth, and you bite onto the red ring as a switch. These are just different ones that are out here. This one provides vibration feedback, and it lights up as a switch to encourage interaction with the switch. This is five switches in one. We used to have one on the market here, which was called the Penta. It's no longer around, but again, you've got five small switches in a small area, so a person can potentially physically move a single finger to those 5 points and activate a range of devices. The flexible switch, that should be somewhere else, but that's again, that's one of those ones where you just deflect the arm, and that provides your switches. This one here is the eye-tongue. Now, there's a couple of options like this, but that are being developed. The idea is that it's radio linked, but there's little control points on that plate. So it's you wear it like a mouth, stabilised onto your teeth. Wear it on the roof of your mouth, and because your tongue has is very agile and it's got very good sensitivity, you can. There's some of the devices have up to 9 different points for which you can touch for different functions, and it could be that you use it for potentially typing into a computer program. So there's all some clever stuff out there. And this, this session today was here just to give you a bit of an awareness of the type of switches out there, and maybe demonstrate a few of them, so you've got an idea how they work. But if you've got any questions or require further assistance, please contact LifeTec, and we'll be more than happy to assist you with any support that you require, or or to see any clients that you perhaps would like to be evaluated for the switch options. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you again in some other webinar sessions. Thank you. Have a good day.